Good morning, everyone. One hour of food coming up.
It's 10 o'clock on a Thursday night here in Las Vegas. Shall we say the weekend starts here? Well, certainly round 22 of this Formula One season in 2024 continues here with free practice 2. And we are under the lights in the entertainment capital of the world, the 12th different venue in the United States to host F1, the Sphere. To your left, $2.3 billion to construct, and the hotels of which we race around, probably somewhere in the same region. And the lights illuminating the Vegas skyline, an estimated 12 million light bulbs on the Vegas Strip alone, and over 15,000 miles of neon tubing. Add to that a few more lights around this, the second longest track on the Formula One calendar. Cars reaching a speed of nearly 220 miles an hour, aided by not one but 2 DRS zones as well. It's a temporary circuit. The start-finish straight, though, is a permanent structure, and the pit paddock building a permanent facility too. It is the start of the final trio of races in this season, and we continue with the softest tyre compounds that Pirelli brings into a race. The hard is the C3, the medium is C4, the soft is the C5. Track temperature is going down, air temperature is going down, and grip is probably falling with it as well. That's the live shots as they are at the moment, one of many helicopters in the sky here in Vegas tonight. You get a very good view from up there, Karun Chandok, of a track that seems once again to be fairly tricky.
It is a tricky circuit. We're seeing lots of drivers struggling, particularly under braking in these cold temperatures. I mean, you're in a shirt. I'm clearly showing my Indian blood with my multiple layers of the
We've got the heating on. You'll be taking that off very shortly.
I hope so. But yeah, I think it's just the combination of the asphalt itself being pretty low grip, then with the cold temperatures, the cold brakes, it's creating some issues. But we just saw so much track evolution as the track cleaned up. They were in the 145s at the start of the session. They were 10 seconds faster by the end of that session alone, and we expect it to ramp up even more here.
And what we saw was a racing line start to emerge. It was very dusty offline, but if you took the right line, the grip was there towards the end. And Lewis Hamilton and George Russell swapped places at the top of the timing standings and made full advantage of the better conditions as the session went on.
Yeah, Lewis waited, didn't he, till the end of the session to put the soft tyre on. Most people ran a bit earlier. He only put the soft tyre on for the last 5 minutes of the session and then got the best of the track conditions. So, but you're right, you know, Mercedes, so far, the early evidence suggests that they've got a good car here, they're competitive. But how many times have we seen that this season? And I really hope, for their sake, you know, that this form can carry on, because when they have form, then we could have 4 teams in the fight this weekend, which would be amazing.
Absolutely, and a fight this weekend that could see Max Verstappen emerge as a world champion for a 4th consecutive year. The gap between himself and Lando Norris, 62 points now, after Max picked up his 62nd career victory in Brazil at Interlagos last time out. So, here are the permutations for this weekend. Max Verstappen will be champion unless Lando Norris outscores him by 3 points. If Lando Norris doesn't score at all, well, the title goes straight to Max wherever he finishes. In the Constructors' Championship, it is looking a little bit closer, isn't it? The gap, 36 points between McLaren and Ferrari, and a further 13 points down to Red Bull. Any one of those teams could finish in the top spot, the 2nd spot, or the 3rd place spot. Mercedes are guaranteed to finish 4th in the championship. And the first practice session gave us Hamilton, Russell, Norris, the top 3, and all British 1, 2, 3. Which wasn't bad for Lewis Hamilton, given that the last time we saw him on track, he'd had a hugely disappointing race at Interlagos, and was even talking about this, well, this is the last time we're racing together, it's a shame to go out like this, which he kind of meant at the time.
I was really confused by that. You know, we heard him on the slowing down lap in Brazil, and I was genuinely confused. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like he genuinely meant that he didn't think he would come and do these last 3 races, which would have been a shame. And you know, for the sake of the Hamilton Mercedes story, with all of their success, wouldn't it be nice to see him win one more time, whether it's here or Qatar or Abu Dhabi, to have one more win before he heads off to Ferrari?
It would be nice to see him pick up a few more points as well and keep up his record of having finished in the top 6 of the championship in every one of his, what would be 18 seasons in Formula 1. He's currently 7th behind his teammate George Russell. And race night here in Vegas, the 10th anniversary of his first title win with Mercedes back in 2014. Right. Green light has gone on, and the cars are making their way out. Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, who were both on the podium at Interlagos, are already out there. Valtteri Bottas, who's got a 5-place grid penalty. He's taken a new energy store outside of his allocation of power unit elements, so it's 5 places for Valtteri Bottas on the grid. Franco Colapinto, the young Argentine. Zhou Guanyu, Bottas's teammate at Sauber. Kevin Magnussen, Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari. Lando Norris, George Russell and Lance Stroll all out on the track. And there is Charles Leclerc, the man, of course, who was on pole last year for this inaugural race on the Las Vegas Strip. Right, Karun Chandok alongside me in the commentary box, and plodding his way up and down the pit lane in near sub-zero temperatures, Ted Kravitz.
plodding David Croft. I'm striding, and to paraphrase Russell Crowe in that great film Master and Commander, my zeal for King, country and Formula One is keeping me warm on this chilly night here in the Las Vegas pit lane. I tell you what, it's heating up already. George Russell just dropped out from the Mercedes garage only to be cut up by Lando Norris being released into his path. It wasn't so much of an unsafe release, but it was quite tight. Maybe we'll get a replay of it on the coverage. But while we're talking about King and Country, let's have a word for the heroics of the Williams team, shall we, Crofty?
Yes.
Two big crashes in Brazil for Colapinto and Albon. 40G. They were 40G accidents. 2 damaged chassis, both repaired. 5 floors written off. 5 front wings, 5 bodywork sets, all written off and repaired. And they come here with a good state of readiness, a good stock of spares, and crucially with the same spec of car that they went to Brazil with. So they haven't had to sacrifice any kind of competitiveness or any new bits, any go faster bits, Williams. So a heroic effort for everybody, the men and women who work in Grove in the Williams factory to get this turned around. And many of the race team as well, who would normally, Crofty, have had this week off in preparation for the final triple header of the year, went into the factory to help build up all these new parts. So if you've got a hat, take it off to them, because they have managed to be here. After there were some question marks on whether they would.
Absolutely.
After those accidents.
Yeah, I'll doff my cap. Well, I would if I was wearing one. I was speaking to Dave Redding, the team manager, long-serving veteran of the sport of Formula One. I said, how are you for spares? He said, we are absolutely fine and down.
This helmet has max venting, so I've got a lot of cold air blowing into my face.
Copy.
And there's a lot of cold air about. That's not what you want. They need to, I would imagine, bring George Russell back in to have a look at that. But as you can see, he's approaching top speed as he makes his way around the next fast left-hander. This is Lando Norris starting off his current fast lap. And yeah, unsteady under braking, a little bit like the first corner at Brazil that cost him a few places last time out. Just to go back to that Williams story, the team saying, or Dave Redding saying, that we've got 4 sets of everything. We're absolutely fine. It's the current spec, you know, it's everything we wanted. There might be some pain further down the road because we spent time fixing things and repairing things when we really should be starting work on next year's car and making bits for that. But for this weekend, we're absolutely fine.
Yeah, I mean, massive effort. And yeah, well done to everyone at Williams for doing that. I mean, it's been tough, isn't it? Between the 3 drivers that they've had, there's been a lot of damage. Yeah. When you look back to going all the way back to Melbourne, and you know, obviously Alex Albon having the crash there, and Logan Sargent having a few, and etc. So, you know, and these days it all comes out of the cost cap, right? So yeah. If they've done, I don't know, it's hard to put a value on it because it's, you know, there's such bespoke cars. But if they've done 6, 7, 8 million worth of damage, that's 6, 7, 8 million that they haven't spent putting upgrades and new development parts on the car. So it's something that the drivers will need to be mindful of for the rest of this year and also into next year. Which
is why Pierre Gasly is such a bonus to the Alpine team currently. Pierre Gasly, who has cost them precisely £0 in terms of crash damage throughout the course of this season. And we are at round 22. As his teammate Esteban Ocon goes fastest by a couple of tenths from Kevin Magnussen, Oscar Piastri third, and then Valtteri Bottas and Lando Norris, and everybody out there on the medium tyres currently, including this man, Charles Leclerc, who's starting the flat-out 1.9 kilometre blast down the Las Vegas Boulevard.
Yeah, it's. I think this is going to be a really interesting qualifying.
I have a lot of air coming through this helmet, so please close up that one so that we can have it for the next one. Yeah, copy that.
I wonder if other people using the helmets are going to have similar comments, really. So all of the helmet suppliers, whether you're Bell, Arai, Schubert, they'll all have helmet technicians here who generally prepare the helmets based on the driver's preferences in terms of visor and venting. And I wonder if that's a comment that they will take on board for their other drivers as well.
We shall see. George Russell fastest from Oscar Piastri. Lewis Hamilton, who was quickest in FP1, currently making his way towards the end of his latest lap, and as you can see, he's gone purple and purple through the first two sectors. Round turn 17 he goes, and he's fastest by nearly 7/10 of a second.
Yeah, Mercedes certainly hitting the ground running here, both drivers. And it's a good sign when they're able to immediately unleash lap time on different tyres, different conditions. You know, the temperature now, track temp down to 13 degrees. You know, that's a good chunk, 5 degrees colder than, and in percentage terms, if you think about it, that's a lot. That's a third colder than it was in the previous session.
Getting very close to the wall, but not hitting it is exactly how you need to take turn 5. Hitting the ground as we watch with Charles Leclerc.
Just a bit like Lando had, didn't it? Just a bit of rear instability as he came into turn 1, riding on board with the World Championship leader. This is into turn 5, and he also has that rear instability there. So they're all
just no grip.
Yeah, they're all struggling with low tyre temp, I think, on all 4 axles actually. It's not just on the fronts.
If they reduce the PSI a little bit, would that help with the grip, I wonder?
It might do.
It's 29 PSI on the fronts, isn't it? That is rock hard.
Yeah, no, it's and then you start to get the sort of balloon effect as well when you get such high pressures. I mean, we're now used, you know, running in the mid to high 20s has now become the norm with these lower profile 18-inch wheels, but it still feels very high at 29.
It does. Right, hitting the ground. Let's talk about skid blocks and protecting the skid blocks and the FIA directive that is going to affect, as Tony Wahlberg here with the entourage, and Jenny McCarthy as well. In the back of the Red Bull garage, the guest list increases day by day as the rich and famous and the great and good come to Formula One. And the protective skid, the material they use on the skid blocks, how is that going to affect the teams that have changed things in terms of the way they want to run the car, and is it a big deal?
I think it can be a big deal if you've got to run the car higher than you have been running it recently. You know, these cars with their ground effects, they work best when they're closer to the ground, and you know, that's the best way to try and seal the floor and seal the skirts, and as long as you can get away without the porpoising and bouncing that we've seen earlier. So if you can get the floor working in the right way, close to the ground, you're going to gain performance. Now, if you've had to adapt that and pick the car up a bit, that could compromise you, that could hurt you a little bit. We don't think that Mercedes were one of those teams that was asked to modify, was it? It was, I think it was Ferrari. Is it Ferrari or Red Bull? Or?
No, Red Bull, I think one of the teams not affected by this one, as Lando Norris goes fastest, and then George Russell goes quicker than him, but it could be anything up to 6 teams on the grid that may or may not be affected by this. But no one has really admitted that.
No.
But we did hear from Frederic Vasseur, the Ferrari team boss, who wasn't overly happy with the timing of the directive before this session started. Big lock up there from Charles Leclerc. Tyres would have been squealing, and this riding on board with car number 20. Kevin Magnussen, another lock-up coming his way. Yep.
Outside front on that occasion. Oh, nice little donut there.
Very good.
Yeah, big lock-up on the outside front.
Right, Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Your skid block correspondent here, Mr. Croft.
Thank you.
I was just at Red Bull actually discussing this, and it was a technical directive that was going to be introduced next year, and Red Bull's position and Christian Horner's position, Christian Horner just said, look, let's bring it forward. Why are we waiting? You know, let's bring it forward to close off this loophole about whether you've got these fixtures and fittings around the skid blocks that fall outside a stiffness measure or margin or a rigidity or anything like that. Let's just clear it up. Let's bring it in now rather than waiting until next year. And I think that's so everybody has had to change their skid blocks and the fixtures around them to a certain degree, including Red Bull. But the question is, who's had to change them, and will it affect their competitiveness, which was the question I put to Frederick Vasseur. So I believe Toto Wolff said in the press conference that Mercedes did need to change. Well, Red Bull changed it, Mercedes need to change it. They all need to change them to a certain extent. So but
By
both
how much
things,
have they had to raise the ride height?
Exactly. So both things are true. Every team I think has had to make a change, but there will be some teams who it potentially affects in their performance more than others, and we will only find that out, I suspect, at about midnight on Saturday evening here, Las Vegas time.
Thank you very much, Ted. Right, let's head to turn 3, shall we?
I think you need to change the setup. More bouncing. Copy, Fernando.
For a man who was in a hell of a lot of pain in Interlagos with the bouncing in his Aston Martin. Right, talking of Martin, turn 3. Martin Brundle, good evening.
Good evening, hello everybody. Yeah, we're on the outside of turn 3 and 4. I'm not exactly sure where 3 finishes and 4 begins, because it's all one long, big, sort of parabolic corner, and they're coming through here at just under 150 miles an hour. And it's that time of the season where, you know, a lot of these drivers have got confidence as the two Alpines are cruising out. They've got a lot of confidence. You can see they're really on top of these cars. And the track, look at this Red Bull coming through of Max Verstappen, absolutely on the limit, car moving around. And the track has got sort of like a talcum powder on it almost. It's got a bit of a white, dusty surface. And if they run slightly wide through here, you can see through the exit there, the wall, the DRS zone starts there as well. There is absolutely nowhere. You just smash the car to pieces if you do let the car run too wide. They're really carrying, as I say, speed and confidence. There goes Sergio Perez, and he was just cruising around the lap before, obviously cooling things down a little bit. So, you know, you sort of think Streetser, yeah, it's got a very fast straight down the back. We're going to go and have a look at that in a moment. But it's this kind of corner where you're really putting a lot of load into the car. That's George Russell. Lewis Hamilton came through here absolutely fully lit up, carrying so much speed. One of those sort of corners really where you sort of step back a little bit because you think the cars can't possibly stick to the racetrack. So back to you in the commentary box. We're going to move on.
Thanks ever so much, Martin. And we're just watching from our commentary box here, Max Verstappen, who's just getting going again after getting to the end of the Las Vegas strip crew in Chandok and finding that his Red Bull displayed all the handling characteristics of your average supermarket trolley.
Yeah, turn 14 is tremendously difficult on the braking, it seems, because they've got probably nearly 2 kilometers of straight line where they've got, you know, this cold wind just blowing onto the brakes. And when they get to the end of the straight, as Hamilton there, turn 1's gone wide. When they get to the end of the straight, the brakes are cold. And these brakes don't work unless they're up to 400 degrees. I mean, it was interesting to see there was a helmet camera shot there from Carlos Sainz we saw earlier. And not only on the dashboard, on the steering wheel, did he have the tire temperatures, but this weekend, he seems to have the brake temperatures as well, which I don't think is usual for him. No. And I think they're so mindful of trying to get the brakes in the right window. There's Verstappen again locking the outside front and going out wide. But yeah, because he's, you know, they're trying to get the brakes in the right window is so important. They, it was interesting from Sainz and Ferrari there to put that on the steering wheel, to have it at all times.
Yeah, I think it can only be a help. It's certainly helping Ferrari at the moment. Charles Leclerc, here he is. Fastest at the moment by 5/100ths of a second. We're seeing drivers just locking up, and many of them having lock-up problems. Sergio Perez next. Yeah, that's a typical move, not just from Sergio, but from many other drivers during the course of this evening.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like 14 is the biggest problem at the moment, just because of how cold the brakes get. But even though you give it a stab into 14, you get some temperature, as Hamilton and Norris and others showed. By the time you get to 1, it's actually quite a long straight again, actually, from, you know, from 16 down to turn 1 is a reasonably long straight. And again, the brakes are cold when they get to turn 1.
Yuki Tsunoda, who eventually made it into the US and had a few issues trying to explain who he was, what he was doing, and why he was coming to America, and why he didn't have the correct visa to be able to do all those things. But he said they finally let him through after being held at the border for some time in his pajamas. Did you read that? He was wearing his pajamas at the time.
Don't you travel in your pajamas?
I normally, if I do have pajamas, I get changed before I get off the plane. I think even you get changed out of your pajamas before you get off the plane.
Depends how lazy I'm feeling.
There is that.
I will say, are you sort of getting like, you know, late 2005-6 sort of Sauber vibes when you see the RV this weekend? It looks a lot like the cars that we used to see then, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I know I am getting those vibes now you've mentioned it. It compares very nicely with the ceiling of the Hotel Paris, where we're staying, and the Hotel Venetian, which is just down the road. You know, it's just fluffy white bits on a blue background. But yeah, no, I do get you. One of 3 different liveries, by the way, for this weekend. RB have a new livery, Alpine have got a lot of pink, and Sauber have got a lot of green. And we'll do our best to keep you up to date with exactly who's who throughout the weekend. Max Verstappen, 7th fastest, 1.2 seconds off the pace. You know, you said you were really looking forward to qualifying. Do you remember the last time we had a qualifying where McLaren or Ferrari didn't get pole?
McLaren or Ferrari didn't get pole?
Didn't get pole. So a McLaren or a Ferrari weren't on pole.
It's got to be a Mercedes at some point.
Yes, it was, and it was Silverstone.
Wow, the 1-2, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah.
They had a front row lockout with George on pole ahead of Lewis on that day.
Yeah, basically, you go back all the way to the British Grand Prix for the last time it wasn't a Ferrari or a McLaren on pole position.
It's amazing to think the last Red Bull pole was, what are we talking about? Miami?
The last Red Bull pole was Austria.
Austria,
for Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
The last Red Bull win before Interlagos was Spain for Max Verstappen. Looking at Joe Guan Yu at the moment, down in 18th fastest. Below him, Kevin Magnussen and Alex Albon, who's only done 3 laps so far. Kevin Magnussen has only done 4, which might be because he half destroyed a set of medium compound tyres when he locked up. I'm not quite sure why we haven't seen much of Alex Albon in this session so far.
Yeah, he's only done 3 laps so far, and that's a bit odd. I think Franco Colapinto's on track there. It looks, is he on a set of softs? Yeah, he is on a set of softs. So that's the first of the drivers we're seeing on a set of soft tyres. Appears to be on an out lap, so let's give him a couple of minutes and then we'll see what the soft tyre can do. But yeah, I wonder if, I don't know if Ted's got any info down there, but Alex Albon down with only 3 laps on the board and at the bottom of the times. The sphere is going wild.
Oh, it's brilliant. That's the new collection, which I shall be enjoying myself building when it gets released next year, of Formula 1 cars.
Yes.
I'm not going to give the brand name out there, but you know,
well,
we all built models and racing cars and football stadia in my case when we were younger. James Vowles just looks thoroughly cold.
Yeah, I mean, on the pit wall, it must be absolutely free. I'll tell you what, Crofty, you know, I have to get, we should give a shout out to the cameramen, because I met the 2 cameramen who are sitting on the top of the cranes earlier today. They're staying in our hotel, and they were on their way to the pharmacy to buy some hot water bottles and some hand warmers, because they did a test last night with a safety car on the cranes outside turn 1 and down the back straight, and they said you cannot believe how cold it is when you're sitting at the top there. But
especially when you get up in the air.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you to all the cameramen for these wonderful shots we're getting.
Yeah, and for keeping your hands warm and able to A, focus and B, move the camera. Silly question is, you know, do the driver's gloves shield you from the cold air too much as well as we ride on board with Franco Colapinto?
Well, the gloves are below the line of where the wind comes through the cockpit, actually. So the wind goes above your head, or over your, through the helmet above. So yeah, your hands tend to stay ahead.
Franco Colapinto on board at the moment. We get a driver's eye view of his struggles on the soft compound tyre in his Williams, and he is seesawing at the wheel, Karun Chandok, as every metre of this lap unfolds.
Yeah, he's there. You can see there's that bump. They're all having that little correction, aren't they, into that that left kink at turn 11 where Norris had the crash last year. But yeah, clearly that is going to be something they're going to have to be mindful of. So heading down, interesting to see, by the way, on the dashboard, there's no lap delta on there. On the top right corner, they would normally have the lap delta, the lap reference, that is. So that would tell you your time on this lap compared to your previous best. But I heard Alex Albon saying he had that removed. And I noticed on the dashboard, next to the number 7, and then now it's gone to 8, that's the gear indicator. On the right, that box that's empty would normally have the lap reference. So they seem to have removed it on both Williamses, which is interesting.
It's back again now.
Yeah, but maybe it's just on the cool-down laps.
Yeah.
I think on the fast laps, it's not there. Ted, you're down at Williams, I believe?
Well, Karun, something else they've removed is their ability to put the car out on track, unfortunately, and get it going. You can see Alex Albon at the back of the garage with balaclava off, crash helmet off, looking at the data from the other car, while his car is stricken in the garage with a technical problem in the engine bay area of the car. We don't have any more details as yet. They've had to loosen off. I think you can see the fuel hatch. Can you see the fuel hatch with just by the mechanic's elbow there?
Yeah.
Which is obviously they've had to loosen that off to get to something. So whether it's a fuel system or there's a blockage or a leak or something, we're yet to get confirmation. But yeah, this Williams and its Mercedes engine ain't going anywhere. I mean, at least they haven't put it in the wall, which was the other directive to both drivers: don't crash. But it doesn't mean they can't have the same technical problems as would affect any team in a weekend. But hopefully they'll get it fixed as soon as possible.
Just to go back to that lap delta against your previous best that Williams seems to have removed. Alex Albon says he doesn't need it. Colin Pinto. Andy Stevenson, sporting director at Aston Martin. Happy 600th. Happy 600th Grand Prix.
Yeah.
A man who was with Jordan on their first day as the Jordan Formula One team, and has stayed at the Silverstone base throughout his Formula One career, celebrating 600 Grand Prix attended as a worker, not just a fan, this weekend, which is a magnificent effort for one of the great characters in the paddock.
Oh yeah, huge congratulations to him. It must be some sort of a record, right? To do 600 Grand Prix with, shall we say, effectively the same team.
Yeah.
Because I know there are other people who have, but they've sort of moved around to different operations. That must be a record for Andy. I'm sure somebody will dig out a stat, but I can't think of anyone else who's got to that number with the same team.
He's like an F1 homing pigeon, basically. You know, he just goes back to the same place. Day after day after day after day, and boy, are Aston Martin glad that they've got him. The amount of times he has saved the team's skin at Team Silverstone in the stewards' room, defending drivers throughout the year. Started off as a mechanic, now they're sporting director. George Russell going really quick. But as a driver, would you want to go back to the Williams thing? Would you want to know how you're doing compared to your previous best, or is there something to say for, I've just got the feel that it's a really good lap, I don't need to know what I'm comparing myself against?
I always liked having the reference number on there. It just gave you some indication, especially in a practice session, because you know, when you would try something a bit different, you'd try maybe a slightly different line, you try using the curb in a slightly different way, you'd find something that you thought, okay, I'll experiment, and you could immediately get the answer as to whether it was quicker or not. Whereas without having that number on the dashboard, the only way to find out would be either the engineer tells you, or after the session you look at or after that run, when you get back to the pits, you look at the data and do it that way. But then it's harder to remember, right? Because you've done it at 5 different corners on 3 different laps. you don't have an immediate answer. So I found it particularly helpful. I think in qualifying, it is different because sometimes, let's say, you know, the first corner, you're behind your previous lap, then you tend to overcompensate, or you might overcompensate later in the lap and you overdrive it and then you make mistakes, which is where I think some drivers turn it off for qualifying. But I would always think for practice, it's a very useful thing to have as you're, you know, you're still trying to find performance.
Well, George Russell has found performance half a second quicker after his soft tyre lap from Charles Leclerc. Fernando Alonso finds performance to go 6th fastest overall with a 1:35.4, and we just saw the Ferraris of Leclerc and Sainz out on the track on the soft compound tyre. So we'll see how that compares with George Russell's lap in a few moments. Colapinto and Bottas have done their soft tyre run. Stroll goes 7th fastest with his latest lap, and here's Lewis Hamilton on the soft compound tyre.
This is an important lap here. We're just going to watch this because he's looking very committed into turn 5. George Russell's time, Crofty, exactly a second quicker than he did earlier on. Hamilton, there's a confidence in the way he's driving this car that I feel we haven't seen. We haven't seen it in Brazil. He wasn't hustling and attacking the corners in this way, and this is nice to see Hamilton being able to drive like this.
Yeah, you know how Lewis is really good at dealing with oversteer, yeah? Catching the car, and that's been a trademark of his throughout his career. And I think it was Toto Wolff kind of expressing a few doubts as to whether he's as good at catching it these days or not. I think that was the gist of his recent comments. This is a track that in days of old Lewis Hamilton would absolutely excel at, you know, with low grip track that you're catching the car all the time. And maybe that's just energized him a bit this evening. And
big on braking.
Yeah.
You know, you know, that's always been one of his big strengths, is braking, right from his karting days, really, in junior formula. So, yeah, on paper, it's got all the attributes of a track that should suit Lewis Hamilton. We'll see. But Russell, you know, Russell's really driving well this season, Crofty, isn't he?
Yeah, and 2/10 up on Lewis. Yeah. However good that lap was, George Russell was a couple of tenths faster.
And across the season, the average this year has been 0.15 between them, you know, in Russell's favour. So he's had that slight upper hand over the one lap as Norris attacks the curbs. Not as quick as the Mercedes
no, he lost
in the
time
first
in the
sector, but he's on the medium still.
Yeah.
He's coming into the pits now to put the soft tyres on, I presume.
Yeah, he's spotted the lines that you've got to stay to the left of. Hulkenberg goes 5th fastest. Bottas, who last year, don't forget, qualified 7th on the grid for Sauber, currently 6th fastest. And just looking now to Oscar Piastri, who's down through the first sector.
Yeah, half a second on just the first sector alone compared to George Russell, pretty close there to the outside. Didn't hook up the inside curb as well as we've seen the Mercedes do, and yeah, 7/10 down. So
here's interesting as well. Charles Leclerc going, I think, for a second warm-up lap.
We saw it in FP1. You know, some drivers doing a double warm-up lap, and in fact, we saw drivers improving on another push lap as well. So you know, we've seen Russell now, Crofty. He's just done a 1:46, so that's his cool down and recharge lap, get the batteries recharged. We'll see if he improves as Piastri comes across the line. His last sector matches what we saw from Russell, but the damage was done in the first 2 sectors of the lap.
Yeah, I wonder come qualifying whether we'll see drivers needing, you know, a couple of warm-up laps before they go and push. Qualifying is slightly earlier than it was last year for the Vegas Grand Prix, but still pretty late at night. Could be still pretty cold. Here's Pierre Gasly, and he's got a car just ahead of him that is rather getting in his way, I would believe. That's Oscar Piastri in the McLaren.
Yeah, thank you very much. Honestly, they can't open their eyes. Oh, what's the deal with them today? Jet lag.
Yeah, jet lag's tough around here.
It certainly is. We've all got it. 7 o'clock I was up this morning.
So was I. I was in the gym. Where were you? Breakfast.
I'm trying to get back to sleep again. Sergio Perez locking up. And at a corner that is so crucial to your lap time. The left-hander before the start of the strip, and there's Fernando Alonso taking to the runoff area.
So Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc have done a similar strategy of I think a double build-up lap.
Yeah,
Sainz has gone second fastest within a 10th of Russell's time. Leclerc, not spectacular, is it?
No, not at all. I wonder.
He bailed on the last sector. Look, he's not done the last sector.
Yeah, with Sainz, 2 warm-up laps, but yet it took until the final sector for him to get all hooked up. Maybe the tyres were still a little bit cold to start those laps. Now you can see the moon and the sphere, and here's Lando Norris now on the soft compound tyre, and he'll be it's 26.5 for the first sector. So that's only about 2/10 down on George Russell's best first sector, the fastest of all.
I think McLaren, Crofty, have gone on a strategy to try and get the brakes up to temperature, which is why we saw Norris pushing hard on those medium tyres, pushing hard till he got in the pit entry, get the brakes up, you know, in a good temperature window, do effectively a hot stop, put the softs on and go straight out, so he can attack on these soft tyres with hot brakes.
Which is fine, but you can't do that with qualifying, or can you?
You can do a U set, maybe not Q1, but when it matters to them for Q2, Q3, you could, you know, it'll be tight because quite a long lap here, though.
It's an interesting tactic, but, you know, you could come a cropper with that sort of thing. For now, though, very good middle sector for Lando Norris as Liam Lawson goes 16th fastest, and Lando Norris around the final corner turns 17 to cross the line, and just over a 10th and a half up on George Russell. That final corner, by the way, you're taking that at a fair rate of knots, 200 miles an hour when it comes to qualifying tomorrow. Ted, let's head down to you.
Down at Williams, Crofty, confirmation that it was a fuel system problem for Alex Albon, but also I have confirmation that they've done great work again, these mechanics, and fixed it, and he'll be out again in a minute or so.
Thanks ever so much, Ted. Tell you what, let's head trackside, shall we? Max Verstappen is weaving around, trying to get some temperature into his tyres, and he's heading towards Martin Brundle. Martin.
And here he is on cue, Crofty, coming through there. I'm down at the far end of the long straight, second longest straight in Formula One. Crazy Fools turn up here well over 200 miles an hour, then try to get it all slowed down. The colour schemes look fantastic under the lights. So 14, 15 and 16 follow each other. McLaren are visibly quicker through here than any of the other cars. There's a Ferrari of Charles Leclerc on a slower lap. Look how slick the track looks there under the lights. And there's the worst traction in here, funny enough, is George Russell and the Mercedes lighting the tyres. A lot of drivers short shift as they get into the corner. They pick up the throttle. Again, the Aston's going quite slowly. And then to dull the power a little bit, they just shift earlier just to take the edge off the torque and the power. And we're seeing also a lot of cars very slowly through. Here's Lewis Hamilton, look, just waiting, trying to find himself some space. This seems to be where they do it. Now we've got to look, they can't go slow enough through here. Lando Norris, Sergio Perez, then we have the Sauber coming through there as well. And behind them is Russell on a hot lap, looking very frustrated with cars in the way. Beautiful Ferrari just sitting there on the apex of turn 14, and then he decides to floor it and get off down towards that final corner. But the track is so slick, I'm shivering with cold down here. No wonder they're struggling to find grip. There goes Max Verstappen again. They pick up the throttle, the rear wheels spin, no traction control on these cars. They have to mind the wall on the far side there. There's Oscar Piastri, streams through here in the McLaren. And by the time they get through the little S-bend you can see over there, they're north of 100 miles an hour. Such is the acceleration on these cars, over 160 kilometers an hour, just literally as they disappear out of my view. So huge amounts of energy going on, huge amounts of energy going on with The braking, let's see the Aston coming through here, Fernando Alonso now. That was nice, actually. He picked up the throttle, but then just couldn't find enough traction with it. Heavy braking, then you want turn in, then you need traction, then you need direction change through 15 and 16. You're really asking everything. Lewis Hamilton then, rally style almost, with an armful of opposite lock, trying to get the back end of the car to hook. Oh, and now we've got a rear axle lock up on the Sauber, goes wide. He's going to just about get out of the way of Sergio Perez. It's all happening down here. Often we've seen cars way down there in the runoff area. So yeah, brilliant little call. We've got a red flag. Something has happened, Crofty.
Yes, we have. Alex Albon has come to a standstill, and there is the Williams. Now, Ted was reporting the fuel system issue that he had, and he's been sent out onto the track, and I would hazard a guess that fuel system issue has reared its ugly head once more, because it doesn't look like he's touched the barriers in any way, but we have a red flag because that car is going to need clearing away. While we were with Martin, we saw the issue with George Russell, who lost a heap of time in the final sector with those back markers, but we also saw Max Verstappen really struggling on his first push lap.
Yeah, he went into turn one, ran a bit wide, had quite a bit of understeers. He came through the kink of 2 into 3, and then just carried on understeering onto the dust. So he aborted that lap, Crofty, and then did another lap, I think, to just recharge. Yeah, 144. And then he'd just done the first 2 sectors before the red flag. He'd done 26.8. Here we go. This was understeering wide onto the dust, and then he aborted it. He backed out of it there straight away. But even on the lap that he was doing before the red flag, he was already nearly a second down, 8/10 down on Hamilton. So that's yeah, it wasn't looking great so far.
Either way, the red flag is flying now, but the Williams car has been cleared away, so this isn't going to last too long. And Lewis Hamilton has jumped to the top of the timing standings from Lando Norris, from George Russell. Same 3 Brits, top 3 again. So that's the first big decision made by the new race director, Rui Marquez, who replaces Niels Vittich, who was sacked by the FIA in between the Brazilian and the Vegas Grand Prix. A reason for that has not been given.
No, I mean, we still haven't heard any official reason as to why he was sacked. Oh, here we go. Let's
talk about that in a moment. So the minute he came out, had to slow down for a fast-moving car, and then
he's staying in second gear. Is it a hydraulic issue? Is he not able to change gear? Yeah, well, in that particular shot, it looked like he was just driving around in second gear.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's got a hydraulic issue.
It never rains, but it pours, even in Vegas, where it's not going to rain. And you have to feel for the Williams team losing valuable track time with Alex Albon in this session. And that's another issue that the boys and girls in the garage are going to have to find a solution for. Session's going to resume in around about 40 seconds time. Yeah, no official explanation given as to what happened with Niels Vittich. Rumours that he didn't see eye to eye with the FIA president, Mohammed bin Sulayem, on a few issues that may or may not have something to do with it, but we don't know. All I would say is that it does seem from the outside a very strange time.
Yeah.
With 3 races to go this season, and with a street race like Las Vegas coming up a week later, to change your race director.
I think the teams and drivers have all been unanimous in saying that, haven't they? You know, it's not just us saying it. It's the people who have to deal with the FIA and the race directors on a daily basis who are a bit confused and concerned. This is up against the wall at turn 5.
He's absolutely pushing it. Rui Marquez, he's pushing it and ripping off a bit of the the advertising covering there. Rui Marquez, race director for F3 and for F2. I understand he was on duty in Macau last week as well, so it's not like he's not had experience at a street race, but it's a big task to come into this as your first race as a Formula One race director.
And doing F1 is different to every other category. The eyeballs and the pressure with which every decision is examined and judged by frankly people like us, but that's our job. Yep. But also fans and the competitors and all that. The level of pressure on the decision makers. Listen, I wouldn't want that job. It sounds very stressful, and I wish him well, because it's it's a tough job to do.
So session resumes, and for the next 18 minutes, just under, it'll be race simulations out there on the track on the medium tyre. Assuming that medium and hard is the way to go for running this race when it comes to strategy. Alex Albon, slowest car on the track, but he's only done 3 and a little bit laps, because when he came out of the pits after a lengthy delay while they sorted out a fuel system issue, this is what happened to his Williams. Stuck in second gear, looks to the whole world like a hydraulics problem, pulled over to the side of the track, and a red flag was thrown as a result. It's just another problem, isn't it, to be solved.
Yeah, it's tough for him, because they, I think this could be a weekend where we could get something strange, don't we? Street races, might get a safety car, might get, some sort of incident. And really, you want to be able to get every bit of mileage you can in terms of your long-run race prep, in case you have to be flexible properly. In case, like, if we get a lap 5 safety car, can you put a hard tyre on and go to the end of the race? Because actually, tyre deg here isn't an issue. No. It's low degradation, it's a low grip surface, lots of straight for the tyres to relax. If anything, tyres get cool, and that you get graining.
It's keeping the temperature and stopping the graining. That's the issue here.
Yeah, and to miss on the race prep will be a disadvantage for Alex.
Missed Azerbaijan, Kevin Magnussen missed Sao Paulo as well, back after missing out in Brazil. Has only raced in 3 of the last 5 Grand Prix, but in his last 2 races he has reached Q3 and 9th fastest, just behind his teammate Nico Hulkenberg in this FP2 session here in Vegas this evening. It's coming up to 11:15 at night on a Thursday night. It's coming up to 1:45, the alarm going off for most of you back in the UK, I'm sure. Somewhere in Australia, in Melbourne, you're all settling down for,
lunch.
Spot a tiffin.
Maybe even afternoon tea.
Yeah, race time I think is 5 o'clock in Melbourne, and a lot of very happy Australians.
Yeah, for a change, that it's in a favourable time zone for them.
It's not sleep deprivation the order of the weekend.
I tell you, I was talking to Mark Webber about the Australian Grand Prix next year, because they're going to have 2 Australians in the grid. Yeah. And one of them was going there with a real chance of fighting for the victory for the first time in really since Webber's time.
Absolutely.
And Daniel Ricciardo in the early Red Bull years, shall we say. And he's saying the hype and the expectation and the ticket sales is just going to be amazing. And to see Lewis in red as well for the first time.
To see Lewis in red, to see Oscar potentially on the podium, to see Max Verstappen, I think, coming back to defend his 4th world title. Even Lando Norris was saying yesterday, the only man that can challenge Max now, of course, it's going to be Max's at some stage. If it's not this weekend, it'll probably happen in Qatar, where, of course, Max won his 3rd world title last season. Ted, let's head down to you. What have you got for us?
Interesting to see that there's some Flovis paint on the diffuser of the Red Bull there, with the tweak that they've got to their floor section, the little floor fence that we detailed at the top of free practice 1. If you weren't awake at 2:30 in the morning, I don't blame you, and B, Red Bull have just introduced an upgrade to the forward part of their floor, and of course that affects the massive airflow underneath the car and then to get worked by the diffuser. So I can understand why they've got the Flow-Vis paint on that diffuser of the Stamper that we're watching at the moment. Just quickly on the Williams thing, this from with the Williams team. They've attempted to repair Alex's fuel system, but the issue has persisted, which unfortunately forced Alex's car to stop on track. That's it, of course. They will investigate further after the session. So it looks like my optimism was misplaced. Bad luck, Alex. Sorry for him, as I'm sure his mechanics did all they could. But yeah, the problem, fuel system problem, still there.
Thanks, Ted. Kevin Magnus. Oh, go on. Carry on, Ted. He's gone. Kevin Magnus.
I'm gone. I'm all here.
Come back.
Always here.
Come back.
If you're wondering how to be on the right time zone for this race, can I recommend Guam?
Guam?
Yes,
Some
Guam.
sort of ointment
In the Pacific.
Oh, Guam, the country.
The country in the Pacific. Well, I believe it's a territory.
All right.
Is it not a US territory?
Possibly, yes.
It's there. It's 4:45 in the afternoon. Exactly the time that we would be having a normal free practice 2 session.
Right.
So
I'm on Guam
if you're
time,
on Guam time, then you're doing it right in terms of Formula One and when we would normally have our sessions.
For the rest of this weekend, Ted, we're on Guam time, and if there's anyone out there listening,
I've been on Guam time all week.
I hope you're having a fine afternoon wherever in Guam you might be.
Do we broadcast in Guam?
I think we do, actually.
Okay.
I think we do. Right, parish notice, Kevin Magnussen went 7th fastest because he was on a qualifying sim, so he threaded his way through the traffic. Former McLaren driver, of course, and their current CEO is with us on the pit wall this weekend. Zach Brown, great to have you with us. Lando Norris, 1100ths behind Lewis Hamilton, another former McLaren driver, of course. Take us through your qualifying simulations.
It seems pretty close. I still think Mercedes seems like they can put down a pretty awesome lap time at will. Russell didn't complete his lap, so I think it's going to be an exciting qualifying. I think we're in with a shout. I'm not sure we're the quickest.
How are you going to cope this weekend, and what have you got up your sleeve to keep these tyres up to a nice temperature?
Yeah, the track's very slippery. I mean, I was just talking to Andrea about it. From what we can see on the data, every driver is struggling to kind of get a perfect lap in. So Lando's been talking about different parts of the circuit have some inconsistency. So with the tire temperature, the type of track, the repaving, I think this will be about who gets a good lap in qualifying.
Zach, just looking ahead, obviously you guys are in the lead of the Constructors' World Championship. Potentially a big result up for McLaren, right? You're going back into the late 90s since they last won it. Do you see Ferrari, being particularly strong at any of the final 3 circuits that concerns you?
I'd say all 3, but this one I think is the one that we think they could be the strongest. Qatar we feel pretty good about with our car, and then Abu Dhabi I think is a bit of a toss-up, and then Mercedes definitely seem to have found some pace, which I think is actually good to get another team in the mix. So, and then Red Bull, I don't think we've seen the best from yet. They've only been on mediums, I believe, this session, or they started on softs early on. So, looks like the Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, maybe in that order. Red Bull, I would imagine, will be in the mix come showtime.
And if you'll pardon the pun, Zach, the protective skid blocks and the change in the FIA directive, any chance that could put the skids on your constructors' title bid?
Yeah, I think that's okay. That doesn't concern us too much. Not exactly sure if that's impacted competitors at all, but that's not a concern of ours.
Because it hasn't impacted you, or you found a solution to it?
Hasn't impacted us, so we were okay with that change.
Thanks ever so much, Zach. Good to have you with us, and we'll speak to you again tomorrow. Lock up there for one of the McLarens. I didn't catch which one as they were heading into the left-hander. Let's pick up Pierre Gasly. Lando Norris it was. that's had that particular lock-up even. Yeah, Gasly, 6th fastest after the qualifying simulations. They're coming on strong a little bit, Alpine.
And Gasly,
even without that double podium,
yeah,
the signs had already started on the Saturday in Brazil.
I think Gasly in particular, right? He drove very well in Austin, very well in the sprint in Brazil. I feel like he's had the upper hand. I know qualifying Ocon statistically is slightly ahead of him, but pretty even. And I think Gasly in general has started to have the upper hand in the second half of the season there.
150th starts in Sao Paulo and 3rd by the end of it, and 4th on the grid here in Las Vegas last year.
Hey, and he's got to step up a bit next year, isn't he? He's going to be the clear #1 in the team. He's got Jack Doohan as a complete rookie coming in alongside him, and so naturally the team would look to Gasly to be the sort of de facto team leader and use his experience there. So I think it's great to see him coming on form as he heads into that.
Jack Doohan, by the way, will be 22 next March when we start the season. Kimi Antonelli will be 18. Ollie Behrman will be 19. Gabriel Bortoletto, who's going to Sauber, will be 20, and Franco Colapinto, who could yet feature on the grid for next season, will be 21. So that'll be what, a quarter of the grid, 22 or under.
Wow, amazing, really, isn't it? And then at the other end of the range, you got Lewis and Fernando in their 40s.
Yeah, and Oscar Piastri now the old man at 23.
Incredible. Well, how old is Liam Lawson?
Liam Lawson is a little bit older than that. No, he's 22. He'll be 23 by next March. Flavio Briatore and Ollie Oakes, who is under 40, and Flavio Briatore, who's not.
Gosh.
No, he's not. I don't actually know his actual age, but he's not under 40.
No,
that is for sure.
Yeah, I honestly, I've had a couple of people ask me, what do you think is going to happen with the Red Bull driver situation?
What do you think is going to happen with the Red Bull driver situation?
I've given up trying to work it out.
Have you?
I honestly have.
Because can't do that. We got another 6 minutes and 12 seconds to go.
It's really difficult to work out what they're going to do between Perez, Lawson, Tsunoda, Colapinto seems to be on the radar. Isaac Hadjar, I saw some lines. He's in the press. He's going to be testing in Abu Dhabi as well. Is he an outside contender for an RB seat if Lawson goes into Red Bull? I mean, apart from Max being there and probably Yuki being in at RB, we think.
Although he gets his Red Bull drive.
He gets a Red Bull test, doesn't he? So I don't know. I've basically given up, and I'm just going to wait for the announcement.
There's a lot of moving parts, but Sergio Perez, according to Sergio Perez, has a contract for next year.
Yeah, but he's only scored 8 points in the last 5 race weekends.
Yeah.
2 of which involved a sprint. So that's less points than obviously the Alpine drivers had a bonus bumper in Brazil, but that's less points than Kevin Magnussen, I think, isn't it?
44 points since he crashed in Monaco on the first lap. Let's just look at Liam Lawson. It's only a little lock up there going into turn 14. But his form is not what Red Bull want. But he says he's got a contract.
I'm sure he's got a contract, but ultimately for the team, they've got to look at what is the best opportunity to score enough points to win the Constructors' World Championship. If they're going to finish 3rd, that's a heap of money that they've cost themselves there. And despite all drivers, you have contracts, there will be performance clauses in there, and those are the bits that we don't hear about.
Franco Colapinto may well have a contract to be involved with Williams in some way, shape or form.
But that makes him a tradable commodity, right? He could be sold. The contract can be sold. Nigel Mansell famously tells a story, Crofty, in 1994. He was an IndyCar driver, and Bernie Eccleston just bought all his contract. He said he walked into the truck one day at Newman Haas, and Carl Haas said, he now owns your contracts. And that's the thing, you know, the contracts, they've become a tradable commodity and an asset for these teams, like other things.
And there's the problem that Red Bull have got. Last 5 events, you look at the point scoring there, Sergio Perez isn't on that list.
Yeah. And you know, when you think of Aston having really not had a good season, Alonso still dragged 12 points out of it. Somebody had a lock-up down at 14 again, wasn't it? Was that Colapinto?
Yeah,
it's yellow flag.
Colapinto. Yeah, he's gone straight on and he's trying to turn the car around.
There he is.
Just as we were talking about it, there he is.
It's funny, I was starting to sort of get some notes and just do a bit of planning about the season review stuff that we're going to be doing later in the year. And I was trying, you know, looking back at the Aston year, it's hard to remember this, and I had to actually go back and watch the highlights of the race and listen to the commentary we did. But Alonso qualified 4th in Saudi Arabia and finished 5th.
Yep.
That's, you know, it seems like a long time ago for them to get that sort of performance and result in a normal dry session.
He qualified 6th in Bahrain as well, and he qualified 5th in Japan, and in the rain in China qualified 3rd. Since when?
Yeah.
It has been going a little bit south, and well, the result, Dan Fallows, the technical director, was relieved of his duties in between Sao Paulo and here in Las Vegas, which wasn't a surprise. And Tom McCulloch was talking to the media yesterday, Tom, who is the performance director, and basically held his hands up and said it's as a result of poor performances, you know, and that's why the decision was taken by the new group CEO, Andy Cowell, who's come in, which is a shame on Dan. He's a lovely guy, but lovely guys, Karun, don't win you points and prizes all the time in Formula One.
Lewis Hamilton seems to have stopped at turn 5. I wonder if he's gone into the runoff area up there. Yeah, he's got going again, which is why we have the yellow flag. As we see Max Verstappen into turn 14.
And still really unsteady under the braking there. Ted at Haas.
Yeah, just before this session closes, just want to really underline that Haas still have some pace in this championship, haven't they, Crofty? Now a massive fight between themselves, the RB team and Alpine, but well inside the top 10, both on the short runs and doing decent times on the long runs from Magnussen and Hulkenberg. So yeah, don't count them out. I think it's fair to say Alpine, while they've been catapulted into that P6 in the constructors, they're not writing off the chance that a team like Haas might give them some trouble between now and the end of the season.
Oh, there's a real scrap for that 6th place, which is worth an awful lot of money. Right, on board with Oscar Piastri now. He touched the wall.
It's just
got very close to it.
Yeah. On the rear, maybe? Yeah, just on the rear. He just did, and then on the dust there. Still made the apex, though, which is impressive. This is what we're saying, Hamilton. We saw the yellow flag come up, but we didn't see this as he nice little half donut there to get himself back on track. So no real harm done there.
Yeah, just waiting for a car to go past before he rejoined. This is Pierre Gasly. Oh, don't go too close to the wall. You've got that no crash damage bonus to protect, if indeed he gets a bonus for that sort of thing. 2-1, and that's the checkered flag to herald the end of this session. Fascinating session. As Zach Brown summed up, every single driver struggling for grip out there, which will be a comfort, I'm sure, as they all have a chat at the drivers' meeting and realise they were all in pretty much the same boat out there. But for Lando Norris and for Lewis Hamilton, separated by just 11 thousandths of a second, the lack of grip was probably less of a problem than the likes of Sergio Perez, who was 2.2 seconds off the pace, and I think caught out by the red flag when he was on his performance runs.
Just look at the speed trap figures from the earlier running, obviously not on the race trans, but from earlier. Pierre Gasly went through a speed trap coffee at 350 kilometers an hour. Wow. That's, what are we talking about? That's 220 mile an hour or 219 mile an hour.
On a Friday.
On a Friday. So
when they turn the engines down a little bit. That's a great toe that Kevin Magnussen just picked up behind Lewis Hamilton. And he's got DRS and Lewis Hamilton hasn't. They're going to enter the corner very close to each other. Magnussen's just ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, on a Friday, they turn the engine down a little bit. They don't give it the full beams.
Yeah, we're gonna see some really impressive speed, because the wind has actually been barely anything, hasn't it?
Correct.
All through this week that we've been here, it's not really been windy at all. So, you know, I think unless we get some changes overnight, well, it'll be interesting to see a pure comparison between engine modes today and tomorrow.
And you want to compare year on year, 1:35.2 by Charles Leclerc was the fastest time in FP2 last year, 1:33.8 by Lewis Hamilton. So 1.4 seconds worth of improved pace year on year.
Yeah, I think the trouble in this place is slightly skewed, isn't it? Because we had such a short FP1 last year, so we didn't get as much track cleaning as we have done this time round.
That is very true.
Although I'm much happier that the session was at 10 p.m. and not at, what was it last year, 3 a.m. or something?
3 a.m. The latest I've ever been up with you, Karun, and I don't ever want to see you at that time of night.
No, I
again.
never ever want to see you at that point.
Much as I love you to bits, time and a place, 3 a.m. eternal is not a time and a place.
No, I want to be seeing my pillow and the inside of my eyelids at that point.
Correct. Practice starts on the grids, as is always the case, pretty much at the end of every practice session. But there's no practice starts allowed at the pit lane exit here, so these are vitally important. Look how they're slamming on the brakes here to try and get temperature into those tyres to get a representative start on the grid, to have some sort of grip. Let's have a little look at the RB of Yuki Tsunoda. That's pretty nice. That getaway.
Yeah, got the helmet marker. Going to watch from the pit wall.
It's one of his former drivers, Carlos Sainz, who finished fourth fastest for Ferrari. It was the lead Ferrari driver, about 2/10 ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc. Hamilton, Norris and Russell, the 1, 2, 3. The dancing fountains opposite the Bellagio continue to entertain. I could stand and watch those for hours and hours and hours. I think I might go and do that, Karun, because that's it for the track action today. Lewis Hamilton, fastest in FP1, fastest in FP2 as well. 11 thousandths of a second between himself and Lando Norris. George Russell, third fastest, British top 3 as it was in the first practice session. Then come the 2 Ferraris, Gasly right up there on a track he qualified 4th last year. The 2 Hasses in the top 10, Oscar Piastri slotting in between them in 8th, Yuki Tsunoda for RB, ahead of his teammates Liam Lawson, separated Tsunoda and Lawson by about 7/10 of a second. Alex Albon only managed 3 and a little bit laps. A fuel system problem ending his run, and Sergio Perez didn't get a fast lap in on the soft compound tyres. Neither did his teammate Max Verstappen. That's why they were right down at the bottom. Hamilton, once again, on top.